On this week's Beyond Bitcoin, Trump announces tariffs over the weekend when crypto was the only trading market open, causing a flash crash with a following day recovery. The altcoin season, when is it ever coming? Or should we adjust our expectations? If investing in crypto assets, there is a simpler and a recent times more profitable strategy, and we share that with you too. We love supporting you with market insights. Please support us by liking and subscribing. See you on the other side. Good morning and welcome along to another episode of Beyond Bitcoin. My name is Derek Graham and today I'm here with Greg Galton, Portal Asset Management's Chief Analyst with some 20 years experiencing in analysing markets. It's an exciting market today. It's Tuesday, the 4th of February, not long after Trump has announced a number of those tariffs against China and Canada, etc. What's been happening, Greg?
Well, it's been a real roller coaster ride that we've seen over the past 48 hours. Obviously, Trump made that announcement over the weekend, as traditional markets are not open. So the only way for people to mitigate the risk of those tariffs was to sell crypto. And you had a significant drawdown. Bitcoin was down over 10% at one stage over the weekend. Most of the altcoins were down close to 30%. You have seen a recovery very recently, back to about 101,500 as we're currently recording. So there has been, you could call it a flash crash, a massive overreaction as usual, but that always tends to happen with crypto. But the main reason is everyone's concerned about the impact of tariffs, what that's going to have on global economic growth, on liquidity, on a range of different factors. And as I said, only the crypto markets are open on the weekend, so they bore the brunt of the market's panic, and that's what we saw over the weekend.
Yes, and it certainly did. But what was extraordinary during that period of time that we all observed is this quite substantial difference between the level of panic stroke volatility between Bitcoin and altcoins. I looked at the holdings of some of my personal altcoins and, they had dropped substantially. I mean, we saw Ripple, which I don't hold, drop nearly 30% at one stage and do some recovery. Plenty of tokens dropped 20 to 30%, and the recovery hasn't been quite as strong. Yet we saw Bitcoin drop 10%. What's happening? And why are we seeing such an overreaction in the altcoins at the moment, Greg?
I think there's a number of different factors there to unwind, Derek. I think firstly, and we've talked about this before with Bitcoin, and look, I'm not a Bitcoin maxi, but I am very strongly in favor of Bitcoin. I do mine it myself, and I swear it's my biggest holding. I do hold altcoins, but Bitcoin is my main focus. There are so many factors there that are specific to Bitcoin in terms of the tailwinds from potential strategic reserves by the US and other countries. Obviously the ETF market that we've talked about for a long time is a natural buyer of Bitcoin as you continue to see traditional investors looking to add 2 to 5% of portfolios in the form of Bitcoin, which enhances returns and reduces risk, funnily enough, because Bitcoin has a very low correlation to a lot of traditional equity markets, so it can enhance returns and reduce risk, or certainly increase diversification within those portfolios. So as you continue to see that play out, it hasn't really started yet. Plus, on top of that, you've got potentially corporates who can now own Bitcoin on their balance sheets, and they don't have to account for it in a very old-fashioned deferred intangible asset kind of way where they could never write the value up, they can only ever write it down. They can now use fair market value. You've got all of these factors that are producing what we see now is an institutional buyer not of last resort, but there's an institutional buyer sitting in the market, always looking to buy Bitcoin. We've never had that before because crypto has been a retail-driven market. It's the retail that got into crypto first. The institutions are coming in later. That's different from any other asset class that we see around the world, where the institutions dominate the supply, the demand and supply, and the liquidity that they provide. So we're starting to see that come through. So Bitcoin tends not to overreact as much as some of the altcoins do. Now that's sort of leading to the interesting question is so what's on the outlook for those sort of coins? And we've talked before about the relative overvaluations we see in the layer 1 chains, where we think that's going to be the most competition, that returns are going to be competed away to almost nothing, because that's the base layer that you're operating. It's like buying the base layer of the internet. So I guess being a bit controversial here, but will we ever see another alt season? That's the interesting question, because historically people that have made profits in Bitcoin roll those profits into altcoins. But these people that hold Bitcoin in an ETF in their equities brokerage account, they aren't going to sell that ETF and go and buy some other altcoins. Correct. They might buy an ETH ETF, but why would you? You'd stick with the biggest and the best. So it's going to be an interesting time moving forward.
So the thing about Bitcoin is its reference to digital gold, and in fact the way it operates as digital gold. People can understand the concept of digital gold, even if they may not understand the concept of 28,000 distributed computers operating it, or 110 million wallets that are connected to it, etc. They do understand the concept of digital gold. When it comes to alts, which is just a broad term for everything else, it's primarily becomes a bit overwhelming, I think. I mean, you've got alts that are navigating and negotiating artificial intelligence and large language model machine learning transactions. You've got alts that are doing decentralized finance. You've got alts being layer 1 platforms that are enabling communities to build upon them. And you've got alts which are Web 3.0 products that are generating returns for the various individuals. And then you've got this enormous number of meme coins. The numbers keep growing, and the complexity from the outside is quite substantial. I think in due course, people will start realizing that alts are like the stock market, and then they're like the rest of the financial community that includes gambling, and it includes all sorts of other things in the community, and they'll start being able to crystallize that in their mind. But for now, there's just sheer numbers. And Greg, the numbers are big, right?
Yeah, they are. I mean, the explosive growth that we're seeing in the number of tokens does present a bit of a paradox. As the market cap rises, the attention per token tends to drop away. If you look back in 2013, 2014, there was only about 500 tokens to choose from. A lot of those are no longer around. Obviously, Bitcoin is, but then you had the ICO boom of 2017, 2018 that brought in billions of dollars into the space, and it brought a lot of scammers too. And today, there's about 36 million tokens out there. And it's projected to grow to 100 million by the end of 2025. It's ridiculous. If you're a newbie coming into the space, trying to work out what coin or token to look at is pretty intimidating. And the interesting thing, and we've talked about this before, with meme tokens appeal to the sort of basest desire in people to own assets that are just fun to own. And you talk about the complexities of some of these new protocols, whether it be DeFi or DeFi AI or DePIN or real world assets. They get quite complex and they're quite difficult to understand, and you really need to be very confident in the team behind them, the developers, the security of the code that they're writing, that they're not going to get hacked, are they actually going to have enough funding to succeed, that they're going to really develop a good product that people really want. That's a significant risk, because there's lots of protocols that have fallen by the wayside, and established protocols that are still going through major issues because we are so early. So risking your money into something like that is a big bet. Whilst buying a bunch of meme coins is a lot more fun and is a lot more akin to gambling. But of course, you have a very high chance of losing all your money in those, especially if they get rug pulled. But the president of the United States of America has his own meme coin. I mean, that's how ridiculous this market's become at the moment. But so there's a lot of these tokens that will be absolutely a waste of money, and in 99.999% of them. So what that means is, going forward, is will we see these really big, significant alt season rallies? I don't think we will. I think they'll be probably shorter, but they'll be confined to a few key tokens. So I think the crypto market is now, rather than a market that all the boats float with the rising tide, I think you'll have to be very mercenary in which tokens you look at, and you'll have to have very high confidence in those particular tokens, because not everything is going to move up when the crypto markets move up. It's going to be very token specific. So the sort of token pickers or the alpha generation is going to be a lot harder, which makes it a lot more interesting, I guess, for people that like myself that do. But again, it's going to make it very difficult for people entering the industry. So that's why, going back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast, Bitcoin is my biggest holding, because it's the one I have the most confidence in that's going to be around in 10 years' time and 20 years' time. A lot of these other protocols, I'm not so sure. You look at the sort of price action on Ethereum recently, its lunch is getting eaten by the layer 2s. And the most successful layer 2 out there at the moment is Base, and it doesn't even have a token. I think that's the problem with a lot of the models, is the VCs, the venture capital firms, have gotten into these protocols, they've given them early funding, they've convinced them to do a token before really establishing product market fit. And Base has proven to you that you don't need a token to become a good product for the market. And I think a lot of these tokens are superfluous, they're unnecessary. It reminds me of DentaCoin, which was a massively failed ICO back in 2017. They wanted to have a coin specifically for the dental industry, but what they didn't realize that you can use any token to pay for goods and services.
Yes.
But it's only the gas token that's really has the economic value. In that case, it was Ethereum. So that's I guess a message from 2017, which feels like a lifetime ago now, but that message is still relevant, and perhaps more relevant going forward, in terms of which specific altcoins are going to have these moves, rather than a broad alt season per se.
That's right. I mean, certainly, although we don't invest as VCs in early stage tokens, we're fascinated by them because we're entrepreneurs. So we often hear about them, or we meet the entrepreneurs themselves. What we discover very often is the entrepreneur is creating a token so that it can be traded, so the VCs can get an exit, and so that there can be a way of generating income. In other words, is the token needed? No, the token's not needed. In fact, the business model could operate without the token and generate return or income. And so a great deal of the tokens are that way. And as you say, the concept of dental coin, I'm sorry, this is going to upset people, but really, Ripple, it's another dental coin. Because the fact of the matter is, it's not needed. Yeah, they're brilliant promoters, they're great lobbyists, they're on the inside in Washington, they've done incredibly well price-wise. It's extraordinary. So really, where's that? Well, that's about momentum, and that's about propaganda, it's about marketing, it's about political push, etc. But do you need a Ripple token to transfer money from America to the UK? No, you don't. You can transfer it with dozens of tokens, particularly simply stable coins. So in due course, I can't see that it actually has a solid model unless they reinvent themselves some other way, but I can't see it on the runway. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing the tokens that are often doing the best are those that are getting pushed and promoted the hardest. And those tokens are standing out. Really, the simple way of looking at investment into the alt tokens is probably by 2 or 3 of the largest and the best known ones that you think have solid performance characteristics. When we look at it, we still look at Ethereum. We're disappointed with the current status of it, but we think it's got a big team and it can reinvent itself. It'd be in a portfolio of alts. Solana, it'd be in a portfolio of alts. And now you'd be looking at other tokens that are sitting down there you think have exceptional solutions to them, maybe like Chainlink or Jupiter, and you'd really learn about those, and then you'd put it in your portfolio of alts. What are you going to have? Maybe 4 or 5, not 25 or 30. And I think that logic's starting to be the case. In other words, you hold your major holdings in Bitcoin and a few of the large alts, and then you have a few well thought out punts that are there, and you put them aside. Maybe they're 10% of your crypto portfolio. And I think that basic logic has really good credibility for someone that's going to come into this space, want to see the upside of this space, and doesn't want to be overwhelmed with the amount of altcoins that are out there, and also spread their maybe their risk across a lot of altcoins, which may not perform. So, in fact, that makes it simpler to invest in this space. Would you not agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Spreading yourself too thinly means that you can't keep a track of how all these protocols are performing. So having a smaller number and getting to know them well also enables you to sleep well at night, because you're not worrying about so many coins. You can basically, you would never buy a cryptocurrency and put it in your bottom drawer and forget about it, other than Bitcoin. You still need to monitor them, but you don't need to be monitoring them on a daily basis. You can monitor them maybe once a week, just check in on an app and see how they're going. So you can really participate still in the upside from crypto, but you don't need to be in every single coin. You don't need to be sitting there for 22 hours a day trading meme coins, because that is a player versus player game. That someone has to lose for someone else to win, and you're being scammed a lot of the time. You're being rug pulled, or you're competing with people that are getting in early, and then you're only finding out about the token when it's already done a 10x. You're buying in near the top, and then you're losing money all the way down. So I think obviously the people want to do that. They're happy with that gambling aspect. But if you're looking to invest in the space, I think that's very sound advice.
Yeah. The other thing one has to remember is, although there might be close to 35 million tokens that are being created out there, or crypto, the vast majority are still meme coins. So the number of what I would consider altcoins, or coins that have economic concept to them, an economic strategy to them, maybe in the now approaching hundreds of thousands, maybe, but it's probably in the tens of thousands. So all those tens of millions of coins, they're just meme coins. They're coins that have been open sourced, downloaded, and they've put an interesting logo on the back and an argument and a proposition. They are, in fact, attention tokens. So they're just whoever's going to get the greatest attention is the one that does the best. Well, who's got the great attention? Dogecoin. Because the fellow is a great attention getter. And that is why it has created a community and has got a belief and a story to it. And the story is that one day it might become the US currency, or a supplement to the US currency
on
or
Mars.
Something like that. Or currency on Mars, exactly, because Elon will take it there. And there's your story. It's the same thing. It's just a meme coin with a story. And that story is a stronger story, and it is a token of attention. So when we look at the main altcoins, there are, in fact, some really fascinating business models with them. They are, in fact, the future of how Web 3.0 will operate. And of course, you have to realize that Web 3.0 is just the next generation of web. As we regularly say, it's read, write, and earn. And that gives some people, or anybody that's engaged with it, the ability to actually generate return on their particular token that they've decided they like the business model of. And the return is not through trading the token, it's through the business model that token is operating. And so the future is there. Right now, it is this enormous period of ignorant exuberance, where anytime someone jumps up with an idea, everyone goes, that sounds great. And it may well be, and it might take years to be great, or it might just be another one that represents this rapidly evolving Darwinism space that the altcoins work in. But for now, as investors, we're focusing more and more on Bitcoin. We are, in the world of Radiance, we're actively generating Bitcoin as a return, and therefore building Bitcoin. And although we still hold some the altcoins, we are monitoring very carefully, and we are steadily stepping away from the majority of the altcoin, because we do see Bitcoin as the one we want to generate return from, and the one that we intend to build upon. And I guess that's a fair way of saying that most of the marketplace is that. What is Bitcoin's dominance at the moment in the marketplace? Greg?
Up at over 60% at the moment. So it's been as high as 100, obviously, when it was the only token around for a number of years, but it's been steadily dropping. I think it's fallen to about a low of around about 40% during the last last alt season, but it's back up at 60% now. So out of that $3.35 trillion market cap of the total crypto market, Bitcoin still accounts for 60% of that. So you can see how quickly it drops down from Bitcoin Bitcoin down to Ethereum, to Ripples, to Solana, and all the way down through the other altcoins. So yeah, it's still a very dominant force going forward. And as we've talked about, there are some very specific tailwinds for Bitcoin that don't flow across to the altcoins.
Well, one of those tailwinds is the adoption by central banks and treasury. And we've just heard recently that I think Czechoslovakia is considering adopting Bitcoin or bringing Bitcoin into its treasury. And if we see that sort of thing happening, where we're actually seeing the avant-garde of the economies of the world turning around going, look, all indicators are quite clear. This is going to be a store of wealth. Inflation is going to be an ongoing issue. We want to hold it and we want to build upon it. In a world where there is only 21 million, in reality, probably about 18 million, because so many were lost in the early days, it makes for a very compelling case with Bitcoin, I must say, and we must say too. And I regularly say, if you're going to go away for 5 years on a very long holiday and you buy one token, what would it ever be? And it would be Bitcoin. Greg, where do you think the next week's going to take us?
That's an impossible one to say, Derek. I think we'll have to cut that out. By the time this gets released, it'll be the end of the week, right?
Yeah, it will be too. So, Greg, I guess we've learnt today that Bitcoin still is dominating, both in its percentage holding of the marketplace, capitalization, also in the number of holders that are holding it. Its awareness level is much stronger, and the discussions around it becoming a treasury asset are much stronger. And the altcoins now are something you really do need to research, and you need to decide which ones you're going to commit into because there's just so many of them. So until next week, Greg, look forward to seeing you then. And no doubt, as we've laughed before, there'll be something amazing happening in this space that operates like Darwinism on steroids. Yeah. Bye for now.
Hopefully no more roller coaster rides from here. But there will be.
There will be.
Okay. Cheers.